Ever heard of a battle where the front line was a staircase, a kitchen, or even a single wall? A battle so intense, life expectancy for a new soldier was measured in hours, not days. Welcome to the story of Stalingrad, the bloodiest urban battle in human history. Imagine a sprawling city on the banks of the Volga River, now a hellscape of fire and twisted metal. This was Stalingrad in late 19. What began as a confident German advance to seize a city named after the Soviet leader, Joseph Stalin, spiraled into a 6-month siege that would change the course of World War II. Why was Stalingrad so important? For Hitler, capturing it was a massive propaganda victory and would cut off vital Soviet supply lines. For Stalin, losing the city bearing his name was unthinkable. So, he issued his famous order: not a step back. The city had to be held at all costs, and the cost was unimaginably high. The German Sixth Army, one of the most powerful and battle-hardened forces in the Wehrmacht, pushed into the city's streets. They expected a quick victory. What they found was a meat grinder. The Soviets, under General Vasily Chukov, had a simple but brutal strategy: hug the enemy. They stayed so close to the German lines that the Luftwaffe bombers and artillery could even strike without hitting their own men. This is where the battle descended into its most savage phase. The fighting wasn't for districts or even streets, but for individual buildings. A single apartment block could change hands a dozen times in a single day. The Pavlov's house, a 4-story apartment building, became a legend. A small platoon of Soviet soldiers, led by Sergeant Yakov Pavlov, held this fortress for almost 2 months against relentless German assaults. They turned it into an impenetrable bastion, with machine gun nests in windows and anti-tank rifles in the basement. It became a symbol of the unbreakable Soviet will. The fighting was face-to-face, room to room. Soldiers used rifles, grenades, knives, and even sharpened shovels. The city's massive grain elevator, a concrete silo, was another infamous battleground. 4 days, a handful of Soviet defenders held off waves of German attacks in the dusty, dark corridors, fighting amidst mountains of grain. The Germans eventually took it, but at a horrific cost, only to lose it again soon after. Both sides endured conditions that defy belief. Snipers lurked in every pile of rubble. The legendary Soviet sniper Vasily Zitsev, credited with over 200 kills, became a hero, hunting his German counterparts in a deadly cat-and-mouse game across the ruined city. His duel with a supposed German master sniper, Major Koenig, became a tale of legend, immortalized in books and film. Food and ammunition were scarce. Soldiers on both sides suffered from frostbite, disease, and starvation as the brutal Russian winter set in. The average German soldier's daily ration dwindled to a few slices of bread. The rats, feasting on the dead, grew fat, and soldiers hunted them for food. The psychological toll was immense. The constant threat of death, the explosions, the screams. It was an inferno. While the Germans were bleeding to death in the streets of Stalingrad, the Soviet High Command was preparing a mass. In November 1942, they launched Operation Uranus. 2 massive pincer movements, north and south of the city, smashed through the weaker Romanian and Italian forces guarding the German flanks. Within days, the pincers met, and the entire German Sixth Army, nearly 300,000 men, was trapped. The hunters had become the hunted. Hitler, in his delusion, refused to allow a breakout. He ordered the Sixth Army to stand and fight, promising they would be supplied by air. But the airlift was a catastrophic failure. The Luftwaffe couldn't fly in enough supplies to feed a trapped army, and Soviet anti-aircraft fire took a heavy toll on the transport planes. Inside the pocket, or Kessel as the Germans called it, conditions deteriorated rapidly. Starvation, freezing temperatures, and relentless Soviet attacks ground the Sixth Army into dust. Men froze to death in their foxholes. The wounded were left to die without medical care. It was a slow, agonizing demise. Finally, on January 31st, 1943, the German commander, Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus, who had just been promoted by Hitler in a vain attempt to encourage him to fight to the last man, surrendered. A few days later, the last remnants of the Sixth Army laid down their arms. Of the nearly 300,000 men trapped in the pocket, only about 91,000 were taken prisoner, and of those, fewer than 6,000 would ever see Germany again. The Battle of Stalingrad was over. The total casualties, including civilians, are estimated to be around 2 million people. The city was utterly destroyed, reduced to nothing more than a vast, frozen graveyard. But its significance was monumental. Stalingrad was the turning point on the Eastern Front. It was the first major, undeniable defeat for the German army, shattering the myth of their invincibility. From this point forward, the Red Army would begin its long, bloody push west, a relentless advance that would end in the ruins of Berlin 2 years later. Stalingrad was more than a battle. It was a symbol of incredible human suffering and equally incredible resilience. It showed that the will to defend one's home could overcome even the most formidable military machine. The smoking ruins on the Volga marked the beginning of the end for the Third Reich. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into one of history's most pivotal battles. If you found this story compelling, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next dive into history. Let me know in the comments what other historical events you'd like to see covered. Until next time, stay curious.